Okay, so we were looking at this foundation of spiritual society, and then these are the contradictions of the Lord, right? So these shlokas, even uh, 16 and 17, bring out all these contradictions of the Lord, and that the Lord. So the contradictions are like the Lord is unborn, but yet he takes birth, right? Um, the fear personified is fearful of the Lord, but the Lord is fearful of the enemy, and he runs away, takes shelter in the fort. Uh, and he's controller of the invincible time. Um, as I said, right, he's the fear personified is fearful of him, but he's fearful of the enemy, and he runs away. Like he ran away from the battlefield. That's why he's even called Ranchodrai, right? Uh, in the battle with Jarasandh, he ran away. So these are all the contradictions of the Lord. I mean, there are many contradictions of the Lord. He displays them even in Vrindavan, right? The Lord. Is getting fearful of his mother, though, as I said, uh, the fear is fearful of him. And uh, like another incident is when the Lord, a fruit vendor comes to the house of the Lord, and she offers her fruit. So in order to give her something, the Lord runs inside the house, and he, in his feast, he is bringing some grains, and those grains are falling from his hand. Now the Lord is invincible, he's achyuta, but still you see that something is falling from his hand. So these are all kinds of contradictions which the Lord says. And the point here is, the solution to all these contradictions is the Lord himself, right? The Lord shows these contradictions, but the understanding is that the very simple understanding of all these contradictions is that all these are transcendental, they are not mundane, and the Lord does all this in order to give them in order to give his devotees transcendental bliss. So that's why you see uh, the pastimes of the Lord, where you see these contradictions, and these contradictions are because the Lord wants to give some transcendental bliss to his devotees, and that's why the Lord performs this activities. Like there are, like you see this, it's the Lord. I mean, we say that the Lord need not do anything, but he is lifting the Govardhan hill to protect his devotees. The Lord is marrying so many, he has so many wives, he's enjoying the householder life. Again, this is all to give transcendental bliss to his devotees. So the many contradictions of the Lord, Uddhav is speaking about here. And the understanding is that all these contradictions are there in order for the Lord, because the Lord wants to give transcendental bliss to his devotees. Okay, let's move on. uh, 17th. Oh my Lord, your eternal self is never divided by the influence of time, and there is no limitation to your perfect knowledge. Thus, you were sufficiently able to consult with yourself, yet you called upon me for consultation as if bewildered, although you are never bewildered. And this act of yours bewilders me. So, what Uddhav is saying, that you are, I mean, Lord Krishna used to consult Uddhav on many matters. Like whenever Jarasandh attacked, Lord used to consult Uddhav, or the Lord used to consult in many places. Like there is a story that the at one time uh, Lord got an invitation from Yudhishthir Maharaj that they are performing Rajasya Yagya. So please come and be the guest. Be the primary guest there. And again, there was another message which came in from some kings who were captured, and the kings had written a letter to the Lord that please protect us, otherwise this whoever has captured us will kill us. So now the Lord consults Uddhav, what should I do? Should I go to Yudhishthir Maharaj, or should I protect these kings? So Uddhav gave a suggestion that, Lord, first you should go to Yudhishthir Maharaj, because since he's doing Rajasya Yagya, you can ask Yudhishthir Maharaj to subdue the king who has captured other kings, and in this way both of your problems will be solved. So, and the Lord, the Lord always like to consult Uddhav, yet because uh, but he has, he is perfect in himself, but still he used to consult Uddhav, and that's like a uh, that is bewildering Uddhav, that why do you need to consult me when you have perfect knowledge of uh, you have perfect knowledge, you need not consult anyone, but you are still consulting me, and that is what is bewildering me. Again, the understanding is that all these activities of the Lord are transcendental, and they were done to give eternal bliss to his devotees. The only aim of the Lord in all these leelas is to give transcendental bliss to his devotees. Right? So let's move on. So these were the two shlokas which bring out the what I would say, the contradictions, and the solution to all that contradictions is again Lord Krishna only, right? Let's move on. 18th. My Lord, kindly explain to us, if now from 18 to 20, these three shlokas tell us who can understand Srimad Bhagavatam. So these shlokas are important, and it tells us what is the qualification which is needed to understand Srimad Bhagavatam. So these three shlokas will tell us that if you want to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, what are the qualifications you must have. My Lord, kindly explain to us, if you think us competent to receive it, that transcendental knowledge which gives enlightenment about yourself and which you explained before to Brahmaji. So Uddhav is asking Lord Krishna about what knowledge the Lord had given to Brahmaji, and Lord had spoken Srimad Bhagavatam to Brahmaji, those 4 shlokas, and Uddhav is asking about that transcendental knowledge which the Lord had spoken to Brahmaji. So a pure devotee like Uddhava, who has no material afflictions because he engages constantly in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. A devotee feels afflicted without association of the Lord. Constant remembrance of the Lord keeps the devotee alive, and therefore Uddhava requested that the Lord please enlighten him with the knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam as previously instructed to Brahmaji. Now, see the humility of Uddhav. This we must also have this humility. He's telling the Lord that if you think I am competent, then you please provide me this transcendental knowledge. So for us also, it is that we must approach, Uddhav is approaching the Lord. Similarly, we must approach a competent spiritual master, and then submissively ask questions, right? The Lord says that in Bhagavad Gita also, pranipatena pariprashnena, right? So that is what we should also do, that if we want to understand this knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam, we have to inquire submissively, and make us competent. Now, and the spiritual master will then provide us with that transcendental knowledge, right? So that is the thing. 19th, when I thus expressed my heartfelt desires unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the lotus-eyed Lord instructed me about his transcendental situation. The words Paramam Sthithim are significant in this word. The Lord's transcendental situation was not even spoken of to Brahma. So the Lord did not give complete knowledge to Brahma when the 4 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam were explained. Now, the transcendental situation compromises is dealing with the devotees engaged in the transcendental loving service. So what did the Lord actually instruct? Those instructions are not there here. They are actually present in the 11th canto, which is known as Uddhav Gita. And so here what the Lord spoke to Uddhav is not described here. It is described in the 11th canto. Now what will happen is Vidura will ask Uddhav to give him that knowledge, but let's see what Uddhav does and what Uddhav tells Vidura about it. So we'll move forward and see what happens. 20th, I have studied the path of understanding self-knowledge from my spiritual master, the personality of Godhead, and thus after circumambulating him, I have come to this place very much aggrieved due to separation. So this is what Uddhav is telling to Vidura, that I have studied the path of understanding self-knowledge from my spiritual master. So again, this is what we should also do, that we must take this knowledge from the spiritual master and his disciples. So the spiritual knowledge has to be obtained in disciplinic succession and not from anything anywhere else. Right. So now Prabhupada actually talks about, that how do we understand this spiritual knowledge? So the understanding of the spiritual knowledge cannot come through speculation. We cannot speculate and try to understand this knowledge. We have to take the words of the authorities and submit to a spiritual master. Then we will get this knowledge. So Prabhupada is actually talking about Sripad Shankaracharya. Actually, Prabhupada had great, we think that Prabhupada did not have great regards for, Prabhupada had great regards for Sripad Shankaracharya, though he knew that he's preached the Mayavad philosophy, but he was doing it because the Lord wanted him to do it. And Prabhupada in his conversations also says that it is Sripad Shankaracharya who has built the foundation for the Vaishnava Acharyas to then build on top of it, right? I mean, he laid the foundation for the Vaishnava philosophy to take over, because at that time the Buddhist philosophy was prevalent, and there was Buddhist philosophy is Shunyavadi, which says that there is no spiritual soul, and people had rejected Vedas. So in order to bring back the Vedas, Sripad Shankaracharya had taught about the Mayavad philosophy. And again, if you look at it, Shripad Shankaracharya never gave a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada explains this because this monist philosophy, Srimad Bhagavatam is all about the dealings between the God and his devotees, and it's not about dry speculation of philosophy. And somebody trying to interpret Srimad Bhagavatam in that way is actually committing a grave offense on the feet of the Lord. And that's why Sripad Shankaracharya never gave a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, and he never committed offenses for the Lord. And that's what Prabhupada is explaining here. So the best way to understand Srimad Bhagavatam is by devotional service and by surrendering to the spiritual master. And dry speculation or trying to understand it by our little brains, we will never be able to do that. And the only way to understand Srimad Bhagavatam is through disciplinic succession and by following the process given by the acharyas. So that's what this is talking about, that I have studied the path of understanding self-knowledge from my spiritual master. That's what Uddhav is telling Vidura, and that's a lesson for us here, that how to understand Srimad Bhagavatam. It is this shloka which is describing that. Okay. Let's move on now. Now the shloka 21 to 23, it talks about how to subdue lamentation. Now, Vidura, when he heard about that all his family is killed, the Lord has also left the planet, he became morose, and then let's see how he deals with it. So let's look at those shlokas. My dear Vidura, now I am mad for the want of the pleasure of seeing him. And just to mitigate this, I am now proceeding to Badrika Ashram in the Himalayas for association, as I have been instructed by him. So Uddhav is telling Vidura that now I am going to Badrika Ashram. So currently they are near the banks of river Yamuna, in Vrindavan, and from there Uddhav will go to Badrika ashram, and that's what he's telling him, right? And he wants he wants association of Narnarayan Rishi, so he's going to Badrika ashram, and that's what the Lord had instructed him. So whatever the Guru had instructed him, he's following those instructions. So again, this is a lesson that the instructions of the spiritual master must be followed, and Uddhav is teaching us from his behavior that the instructions of the spiritual master must be followed. 22. There in Badrika ashram, the personality of Godhead in his incarnation as sages Nar and Narayan has been undergoing great penances since time immemorial for the welfare of all amiable living beings. Right? This is very clear. And Prabhupada here talks about the four. We go to this four places, right? We have these four places of pilgrimage, and to date we still go there: Badrika Ashram, Rameshwaram, Jagannath Puri, and Dwarka. So these are the four places of pilgrimage for all people of Bharatvarsha or Hindus. And we still continue to do this: Badrika Ashram, Rameshwaram, Jagannath Puri, and Dwarka. These are four places in the four corners of India, and people still visit and consider that. I mean, these are called as four dhams, where any person before leaving the body should visit. So Sri Sukadev Goswami said. Now again this conversation is coming back to Parikshit Maharaj and Sukadev Goswami, right? Because Sukadev Goswami is telling all this to Parikshit Maharaj, that discussion has happened between Vidura and Uddhava, and that is what they were speaking. So that is now again it is coming there. After hearing from Uddhava all about the annihilation of his friends and relatives, the learned Vidura pacified his overwhelming bereavement by dint of his transcendental knowledge. So this is how he subdued his lamentation. How? By dint of his transcendental knowledge. So again, for us, this is the lesson that we must gain transcendental knowledge in order to achieve detachment. And by detachment, we can overcome these kinds of lamentation. So this material world, it's very clear that, right, we will always get this kind of, we always will have to face these problems, the problems of death, disease, old age, right? So and this world is like dukhalaya shashvatam, right? So in order to be able to overcome these lamentations, we must develop this transcendental knowledge, and this transcendental knowledge, because Vidura had that knowledge that he had he was a devotee of the Lord, right? So he had all that understanding and knowledge, and by dint of that, he was able to overcome all of this lamentation, get back to his senses. He did not just simply kept crying and just so he understood that this is all will of the Lord, and he just continued to continued his journey. So he could overcome his what I would say lamentation, and for us also it's a lesson that if we have to overcome lamentation, we must develop transcendental knowledge. We must understand ourself, that self SSR sessions, which we call, right, science of self-realization. That is what is needed if you have to overcome the bereavement or the or these bad instances which happen in our life, right? Now it is easier said than done, but then that is the formula. There is no other way which will help us. The faith in God, faith in Guru, faith in Shastra, and this transcendental knowledge, that is the only thing which will help us. Nothing else in this material world will basically help us if we get into or we have those problems in life, right? That's what Vidura is teaching us. from his own example. Let's move on. Now, verses 24 to 26 in this chapter, they talk about Vaishnav Sadachar, some finer aspects of Vaishnav Sadachar. So let's look at it, how what teachings are there here. So 24, while Uddhava, the chief and most confidential amongst the devotees of the Lord, was going away, Vidura, in affection and confidence, questioned him. So Vidura is now asking questions to Uddhav. That he's asking about the transcendental knowledge. He's asking questions. Please understand that Vidura is very knowledgeable, and Uddhava is also very knowledgeable, and Uddhava is younger to Vidura, but still Vidura is considering him to be superior because he thinks that, and it's a fact that because Uddhava has done much greater service to the Lord directly. So somebody who has done greater, somebody who has done bhakti, or somebody who has done devotional service, you can, even though he is younger in age, you can still, we can go to them for counsel. We can gain transcendental knowledge from them. So this is one of this aspect of Vaishnav Sadachar, right? You should not think that I am elder and you should not get puffed up. So Vidura is showing us by his example that though Uddhav is younger, he considers Uddhav to be more knowledgeable because he has done devotional service to the Lord directly and was associate of the Lord directly. So we should also, when we get association of somebody who's younger but who has served somebody who is an associate of our Guru Maharaj, or somebody who is younger, even if he's younger, we should take their association, take guidance from them, because they have served the Guru directly, and that is the Vaishnava etiquette which is coming out from here, right? Let's move on. Now Vidura said, "O Uddhav, because the servants of Vishnu, the Lord, wander in the interest of serving others, it is quite fit that you kindly describe the self-knowledge with which you have been enlightened by the Lord himself." So that's again Vidura is asking Uddhav that since you have been a direct associate of the Lord, please give me that self-knowledge which you have and which you have been enlightened by the Lord. The Lord himself has given you that knowledge. Please give me that knowledge, right? Okay. Now what Uddhav says in response to this. So Uddhav said, "You may take lessons from the great learned sage Maitreya, who is nearby and who is worshipable for reception of transcendental knowledge. He was directly instructed by the personality of Godhead while he was about to quit the mortal world." Now what Uddhav is doing, Uddhav is telling Vidura that please go to Maitreya Rishi. Why is he saying go to Maitreya Rishi? Why is he not directly instructing? Because Uddhav knows that Vidura is elder to him in age, and Maitreya Rishi and Vidura are kind of peers, right? They are of similar age and peers. So what Uddhava is telling is, Maitreya Rishi is, Maitreya Rishi is close by. Why don't you approach him? So again, this is Vaishnav Sadachar. Now, when let's say you have somebody senior to you nearby, and you have been asked, what Uddhav is trying to bring out is that whenever a senior person is present, you should delegate to them, let them speak rather than you speaking for personal gain and all that. So again, that is Vaishnav Sadachar, that whenever a senior is present, we honor them and we respect them, and Uddhav is doing that. Now to give an example that I've heard this. So once Prabhupada had visited New Vrindavan, and Radhanath Swami Maharaj had made a garland for Prabhupada there. and Prabhupada went and sat on an asan, and Maharaj was bringing the garland, and Prabhupada was actually ready to receive the garland from Maharaj. But what Maharaj saw was there was another senior Vaishnava. So Maharaj gave that garland to him and told him to garland Prabhupada. Now imagine this, right? Nobody would want to miss the opportunity to garland Prabhupada, right? You are directly garlanding Prabhupada. But what Maharaj did was he gave an opportunity to a person who was senior, and allowed him to do the garlanding. And what Prabhupada did was Prabhupada actually, I mean, he accepted the garland, but Prabhupada was looking at Maharaj and said, yes, this is the right etiquette. So this is what this shloka brings out, that Vaishnav Sadachar, that we must follow that Sadachar, and that's what this Maryada Vyakti Krama is being described here. And the Lord likes that this should be followed, that we should follow this Maryada Vyakti Krama, because if we don't do that, we lose duration of life, opulence, fame, and piety, all the blessings of the world. So again, this shloka brings out that fine Vaishnav Sadachar which is present amongst the devotees, and Uddhava is displaying that for us. Okay, let's move on. Now for from shloka 27 to 29, or 27 and 28, this describes about how we can understand Lord Krishna, and Lord Krishna should be understood through disciplinic succession. So that is what these shlokas will bring out. Let's look at how that happens. So Sukdev Goswami said, O king, after thus discussing with Vidura the transcendental name, fame, qualities, etc. on the bank of Yamuna, Uddhava was overwhelmed with great affliction. He passed the night as if it were a moment, and thereafter he went away. So Uddhava told Vidura to approach Maitreya Rishi, and then he passed the night there, and then on the next day he left for Badrikashram. Text 28. The king inquired, at the end of the pastime of the Lord of the three worlds, Shri Krishna, and after the disappearance of the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties, who were the best of the great commanders, why did Uddhava alone remain? So this is a question which Parikshit Maharaj is asking Shukdev Goswami, that everybody has actually, every close associate of the Lord left the planet. Then why did Uddhava alone remain? Now this is where the point is, right? See, the Lord had directly instructed Uddhava, and he had given him that transcendental knowledge, and that's why the Lord wanted Uddhava to spread this transcendental knowledge. This is what is disciplinic succession, right? The Lord had instructed, I mean, you are getting that instruction from the Guru. So the Lord is the Guru of Uddhava, and Uddhava had received the instruction, and now the Lord is asking Uddhava to propagate this transcendental knowledge. And that's why Uddhava, the Lord asked him to stay back, and he's not going right away, so that he can propagate the transcendental knowledge, and that disciplinic succession can continue. So that's the point here, and that's the answer to why did Uddhava alone remain, right? This question was asked by Parikshit Maharaj to Shukdev Goswami. Okay, we will move ahead in the interest of time. So now from 29 and 30, we will see who are the most trusted people of God, who are the most trusted people, and let's see what happens. So Shukdev Goswami replied, my dear king, the cursing of the Brahmanas was only a plea, but the actual fact was the supreme desire of the Lord. He wanted to disappear from the face of the earth, and face of the earth after dispatching his excessively numerous family members. He thought to himself as follows. He wanted to disappear from the face of the earth after dispatching his excessively numerous family members. He thought to himself as follows. So let's see what is given. Now I shall leave the vision of this mundane world, and I see that Uddhava, the foremost of my devotees, is the only one who can be directly entrusted with the knowledge about me. Right? So you can see who are the most trusted people of the God, right? Uddhava is getting that opportunity, right? And why is Uddhava getting that opportunity? Because he was a pure devotee of the Lord, right? The foremost of my devotees, right, is the only one who can be directly entrusted with the knowledge about me. So the Lord, so the God, I mean, the Lord's most trusted people are his devotees only. The Lord does not trust anybody apart from his devotees. So if we become a devotee of the Lord, we can enter into his inner circle. That's the point, right? The foremost of my devotees, right? So the devotees of the Lord, and the Lord actually entrust the knowledge with Uddhava because he was a devotee of the Lord. So we can also become the devotee of the Lord, and we will also get a similar kind of position, right? Where the Lord will entrust us with that empowerment. He'll give us that empowerment also, right? So if you are doing services for the Lord will entrust us with more services, and he'll also give us that empowerment which he has given to Uddhav. He entrusted that knowledge about himself to Uddhava because he was the foremost of his devotees. Correct? Right? Let's move on. Now, from 31 to 30, 31 and 32 actually talks about how we becoming that God's confidential messenger. Now, let's look how how that happens. Uddhava is not inferior to me in any way because he is never affected by the modes of material nature. Therefore, he may remain in this world in order to disseminate specific knowledge of the personality of Godhead. So this is a qualification to become a spiritual master, right? He should be never affected by the modes of material nature. This is what the Lord is saying. Anybody who is not affected by the modes of material nature can become a spiritual master. I mean, see the Prabhupada talks about Brahmanas. Brahmanas are in the state of goodness. But in order to become a spiritual master, you have to even transcend that mode of goodness and reach the state of Shuddha Sattva or Vasudeva. And Uddhava being in that state, he was entrusted by the Lord to disseminate the specific knowledge of the personality of Godhead. So this is the qualification for becoming a spiritual master, that somebody who is not affected by the modes of material nature can disseminate knowledge about the personality of the Godhead, right? We had also seen that in our nectar of instructions, right? It talks about the qualities of who can take up disciples in this word, Vacho Vegam, right? That shloka. And this is talking about something similar, where somebody who is not affected by the modes of material nature can propagate the knowledge of God, right? So we can become messenger of God when we try to transcend the modes of material nature, correct? And it's not easy, but by practice and by blessings and by Lord's will, we can do that. Moving on, Sukdev Goswami informed the king that Uddhava, being thus instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the source of all Vedic knowledge and the spiritual master of the three worlds, reached the pilgrimage site of Badrikashram and engaged himself there in trance to satisfy the Lord. Okay. Let's move on. Now there are only 3 shlokas left, and these 3 shlokas talk about crying for Krishna. Let's see what it says. 33rd, Vidura also heard from Uddhava about the appearance and disappearance of Lord Krishna, the super soul in the mortal world, which is a subject matter sought after with great perseverance by the great sages. Okay. The Lord's glorious acts and his acceptance of various transcendental forms for the performance of extraordinary pastimes in the mortal world are very difficult for anyone other than his devotees to understand. And for beasts, they are simply a mental disturbance. Okay. Let's move on. 35. Understanding that he was remembered by Lord Krishna while quitting this world, Vidura began to cry loudly, overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love. So Uddhava informed Vidura that the Lord actually remembered Vidura when the Lord, because there was a conversation between the Lord and Uddhav, which is not described fully here, right? And Uddhava told Vidura that the Lord was thinking about you and when while quitting the world, and because of that Vidura began to cry loudly, and crying is one of the most I would say somebody who has a soft heart, somebody who has that love for God can only cry for him, right? Otherwise it's not possible to cry for somebody, right? So because Vidura had that love for God, he cried loudly, he began to cry. And this is not lamentation, this is crying because you love somebody, right? This is what this shloka is trying to bring out, that Vidura began to cry loudly because he had that love for God, and he uh, so anybody who has love for God, I mean, he cries for the Lord, right? Crying is a is a very direct expression of the love. It's not a weakness, but it's an expression of love. But crying in lamentation is different, and this is crying because you love somebody, right? And Prabhupada says that this crying is the last word in the progressive path of devotional service. One who can cry for the Lord in love is certainly successful in the line of devotional service. This is very, very important, right? And Vidura began to cry loudly. So he had, because he had done that devotional service, because he had that love for God, he began to cry. Last shloka in this. After passing a few days on the bank of the river Yamuna, Vidura, the self-realized soul, reached the bank of Ganges, where the great sage Maitreya was situated. Again, this was instructed by Uddhav to Vidura that he should approach Maitreya Rishi to gain knowledge about the Supreme Lord. So, because Maitreya Rishi was also present when the discussion between Vidura and Lord Krishna was happening, and whatever knowledge the Lord had given to Uddhava, Maitreya Rishi had also received it. So that's why Vidura will now approach Maitreya Rishi in order to gain that knowledge. And that's where this chapter ends. And in the next chapter, we'll see how what is the conversation between Vidura and Maitreya. And that's again is a very, very interesting chapter. So I will stop here. Thank you everyone, but I've taken more time. I'm sorry about that. But this chapter, though small, simple, but it has a lot of lessons for us in our spiritual path. And all of these lessons are, I mean, I can talk about them, but in order to implement them, it's not easy. But with practice, with devotion, we can do it, and the ultimate aim can be achieved through this, right? Now if you see, like, it's a pretty simple conversation which is happening, but look at the depth of the knowledge which is there. Look at the depth of the lessons which you can take from this small chapter also, right? So thank you, and I think it's now open for questions and comments.
Thank you, Prabhu. Wonderful class. The way you summarized, Prabhu, especially those points, Prabhu, like this sloka to this sloka, it's a Yeah, dangers of intoxication, how the Lord left the world, Lord's attention is pure devotees, foundation of spiritual focus, Vaishnava Sadachar. Yeah, those are subtle points, Prabhu. If I read myself, I don't think I'll make out of them. Thank you, Prabhu. Wonderfully. Yeah, as you said, it's a small 36 slokas, but there is a lot to learn, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare
So,
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji, for wonderful session. Prabhuji, I have one question, Prabhuji. You were saying two things actually.
Mhm.
One, the discussion between the Vidura and sorry, uh, the Uddhava is happened on the banks of Saraswati River, but you are sometimes saying Yamuna
No, no, no,
also.
no, no, Prabhuji. It happened on the banks of river Yamuna. See, this conversation is happening after the Lord has left the planet. This is not happening uh, when the Lord is. So the Lord left the planet from the banks of river Saraswati. But the conversation between Vidura and Uddhava is happening on the banks of Yamuna. So what has happened is Vidura, after going on pilgrimage all over Bharatvarsha, he comes to the bank of river Yamuna and there he meets Uddhava. And this conversation between Uddhava and Vidura is happening on the banks of Yamuna. And Uddhava is telling Vidura what happened, how the Lord left, and that incident or that pastime happened on the banks of Saraswati.
Hmm. No, no. Tell me the last point, Prabhuji. What you said? Last point.
The last point, Prabhuji, is the pastime of the Lord leaving the world is it happened on the banks of river Saraswati. But
Okay.
this conversation between Vidura and Uddhava is happening on the banks of river Yamuna in Vrindavan.
Mhm.
So Uddhava, as instructed by the Lord, is going to Badrika Ashram, and he happens to be present on the banks of river Yamuna. Vidura comes there, and the conversation between Vidura and Uddhava happens on the banks of river Yamuna. After that, Uddhava leaves for Badrika Ashram. Vidura, after spending some time, right, after passing a few days on the banks of river Yamuna, here you see that clearly. On the banks of river Yamuna, Vidura, the self-realized soul, reached the bank
Yeah.
of Ganges in order where the great sage Maitreya was situated. So this conversation is happening on the bank of river Yamuna.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
And one more question, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
One question, Prabhuji. Uh, See, as a etiquette, Uddhava guides Vidura to discuss the about the transcendental knowledge with Maitreya
Mm-hmm.
as a etiquette, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
but he narrates some of the pastimes to Vidura, right? But he doesn't directs him in the first stage. Actually, he narrates. So, how to understand this, probably?
So
Because
so
after
Prabhuji,
saying so many, after discussing so many pastimes, then he says you can meet with Maitreya for the transcendental knowledge. But how to understand this? You got my
so,
question,
yeah,
Prabhuji?
yeah, Prabhuji, I understood your question. See, when Vidura actually reaches the bank of Yamuna and he meets Uddhav, he asks Vidura asks Uddhav about his family, right? About Lord Krishna. How
Right,
is he? How
right.
is my? He talks about he asks about Surasena. He asks about the Yadu dynasty. He inquires from Uddhava, and in response to that, Uddhava actually, when he thinks of Lord Krishna, he becomes he thinks of Lord Krishna and he goes into a trance kind of thing, and then he describes some of the pastimes of the Lord. He's describing only the pastimes of the Lord. Okay, but the Lord had given him some knowledge. He has given him some instructions and knowledge, and those are not given by Uddhava to Vidura, and he directs him to meet Maitreya Rishi in order to understand that. So the description of the pastimes of the Lord is in response, because Uddhava, just when he thinks of Krishna, he starts thinking about all those pastimes, and he just tells Vidura about it. And also he answers his question about how his family is, and all that. And that's why he describes how the Lord left the planet. He also describes how the Yadu dynasty is destroyed. But he does not give that direct knowledge which the Lord had given to Uddhava at the last time. So there is a conversation between the Lord and Uddhava before the Lord leaves the planet. So the details of that conversation is not described by Uddhava to Vidura, and that's why Vidura approaches Maitreya Rishi for that.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare
Prabhu,
Krishna.
I just have one word, Prabhu.
Mhm.
When Krishna was talking to Uddhava, he says, in the days of yore. What is that yore? That word? What it means yore?
I mean, in the
Days of...
past, that is
Oh,
what I
okay.
understood, Prabhuji. I mean, that's what I understood.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, so we'll close the class, right? Thank you everyone for joining. Please forgive me if I've spoken something wrong, or if I've spoken anything which might have hurt you. All right. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta koti vaishnav vrinda ki jai.
Srila Prabhu.
Bharat ki jai.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Shreegopal Prabhu ki jai. Nandavad.
Pranam Prabhuji.